Why won't they eat our propaganda as readily any longer? Why won't the kids believe our propaganda any longer? That's the name of the game here. That's what the actual point of contention is here. Okay? China's official state media, People's Daily, recommended on American TikTokers version to Xiaohongshu, Red Note. President Xi says the hope for U.S.-China relations lies with the peoples. In the age of globalization and the internet, our community of shared destiny will only become closer. Rather than call them refugees, let's call them villagers of Village Earth who have found a new home. I love that. Wonderful message. I'm on board with that. It's always so funny because, like, regardless of your criticisms of the Chinese government, and some are very valid, you'll have the Chinese government be like, yeah, we need to do prosperity for all people. And then there's immediately like 700 people in the replies being like, what about prosperity at Tiananmen Square? What about, what about the Uyghur Muslims? And it's like, you click on their profile and they're literally like, Israel should go harder. Israel should go harder on killing these terrorist children. And it's like, dude, I don't think you care about the Muslims at all. What? Like, what, you just wanted to destroy any opportunity of people just having like a good time with one another across cultures, you know? So much of the CIA's work being flushed down the toilet. Yeah, I mean, not really. This is not, I don't think you guys understand the mindset of the average American in terms of like how they see the Chinese, okay? They're not white enough, bro. They're not white. The average American does not look at a Chinese person and go, oh, they're just like normal. They're normal people just like us. I don't think you understand. The average American still despises the Chinese. They think the Chinese are like an alien species. Okay?
And let me tell you, I've been taken up to the third heaven. I've been jacked into the big plan. I've seen it. I've seen it. I can't even compute all of it. It's so fantastical. You've not seen nothing. You ain't heard nothing. You ain't smelled nothing like this. I don't have words to tell you. But I tell you, anybody tries to get in the way of the incredible plan the big guy's got for us has got me pissed, and I'm just begging to stay on the team, man. Just put me in the game, coach. Whatever you say, coach. I know I'm weak. I know I'm pathetic.
That is what she said. Unironically, when Mao sent his family to the mines, he said, put me back in, coach. I will learn. I will atone for my reactionary sentiment. I will atone. I will learn the process. I will learn the ways in which the rural farmland can be improved. And I will use that. I will use that personal experience in an effort to uplift, all of China.
I'm so lucky you, baby. What do I do, Bob? Like a hunting dog, man. Just take me out of the house. Just turn me on them. Just tell me what I got to do. Tell me how I serve you. Tell me what I can do for you right now. Woo! And let me tell you,
you agree this sudden popularity of Red Note as a Chinese psyop, right? Has to be no? No, I think a lot of people love their treats. No, I genuinely think people just love their treats so much that they think it was like TikTok's algorithm was so good that the very fact that the American government is planning on banning it made the very fact that the American government said that it was planning on banning it made people go, okay, well, I'm going to find another Chinese application to go and utilize. And I think that there is also a great overemphasis on, how many people are actually going to Xiaohongshu, or how many people are actually like learning to love their Chinese counterparts. That's it. It's not like a psyop. Not everything has to be this like broad, like secret initiative, you know? And I say this about like the American government too. Sometimes you guys will say that about like even the American government, where you're like, oh my God, this must be a psyop. By the American government, it's like, nah, it's not. It's just how things are. Once you understand what human beings are motivated by and recognize that most human beings have the exact same motivations in general, I think it makes a lot of things easier to dissect, easier to comprehend. I'm not a chainer. I'm not a China hater. I love Xi. I just think that you're so good at spotting American psyops, but I think we're having trouble seeing psyops from non-Western countries. Dude, you have to also understand, what is the psyop? Like, what is the psyop that people go, oh, wow, Chinese people are just like us? Like Xiaohongshu, out of the many different applications readily available to the Chinese population, Xiaohongshu, from what I understand, is also like the Chinese urban the urban Chinese class that is like more liberal, more like many of them have traveled to America. Some of them actually went to school in America. It's probably like it just happened to be like a perfect way for Americans to be introduced to Chinese culture because like a lot of the people there speak English. Okay. I don't think that it was like a deliberate. I don't think that it was like a deliberate psyop. Also, what is the psyop? The psyop there is what? To make Americans think Chinese people are not. To make Americans think that Chinese people are not like weird aliens that live in this like hellish dystopia and actually just like normal people that have Pinterest accounts in the same way that you do. Is that what it is? Is that the actual psyop? Like, what's the psyop? What's the goal here? You know what I mean? That's what I don't understand. Americans interact with urban Chinese who study in the US and we're surprised they're the same people. Yeah, that's the funniest part about it is that like the people that they're interacting with on Xiaohongshu for the most part are people that they literally did not interact with in college but had every opportunity to do so. Because half of those people on Xiaohongshu, from what I understand, are already people that like went to American schools and then went back to China, you know? So you're not meeting anyone new that you I mean, it's just that because it's a Chinese app, I think that people are probably more. I think because it's a Chinese app and the app is literally in Mandarin, it was not created for a Western audience. That it quite literally is designed to, for Chinese people to be more free about their perspective. Because as far as like talking to Chinese people living in the Western world, and this is something that like my Chinese chatters will probably also will openly admit here, okay, is that many Chinese people are a little afraid of expressing any sort of pro-China sentiment in the West. I wonder why that is the case. Like I remember talking to Water, Jake's girlfriend, for the first time about like my actual my honest opinions on China, and she was legitimately shocked. She thought I was like messing with her. She thought I was joking. And I was like, no, I'm not joking. Like, this is what I truly believe. And she's like, I've never heard, she was literally like, I've never heard an American say that. because most Americans have like an insane number of like crazy opinions and this is, I think, I will say this, the most charitable interpretation is this, okay? We have the capacity in the United States of America to look at other countries that do the exact same thing that we do, but then somehow treat it as though it's like this super secret, super nefarious, super evil thing. It's the dynamic that I've mentioned before. It's the dynamic between gulags and work camps versus slave labor in prisons in the United States of America. People criticize slave labor in prison in the United States of America, but many people understand it. Many people think it's good. Many people actually defend that principle. Whereas like gulags are work camps where, 10 billion people are dying every day in the salt mines. It's the same thing. You just gave it a different name in order to say like it's scary when our foreign adversaries are doing it. If you have a criticism for it here, then you should have a criticism for it there. But many people don't have a criticism for it here and actually think it's like an entirely different thing over there. That is my frustration for the most part, because there are valid criticisms that you can launch against China, and I do in many instances. But I always take the position that this is still like normal state stuff, right? Normal states. Like big states, this is how they operate. And then people will turn around and say, you're clueless. I know. I'm so clueless. I know. How could I ever? Instead of saying that, every state has shortcomings, including but not limited to China, okay? I should instead just lap up like insane things. China is not a good country. America has issues, but that does not make China's human rights abuses any better. There is no point where I said China's human rights abuses are any better. This is what I mean. You're missing the point that I'm making here. The point that I'm making here is that I criticize America all the time. I have no motion in actually changing things here. And I criticize the administrative state of the Chinese government as well. But the difference is a lot of Americans, a lot of people in the Western world in general, genuinely I think that there it's just like so much worse over there. It's so much scarier over there. My job is to try to explain to you that, like, no, there are issues in China. Of course there are. Every single state has a litany of complications, a litany of issues, and that it is not all that different from the issues that we foresee and we experience here. And in some instances, not as bad even, right? That's the difference. I think one of the greatest examples that I can deliver to you in this duality that we talk about, one of the greatest examples I can point to is the fact that if Israel operated in the brutal surveillance state mechanisms with re-education camps that were set up for what the Chinese government perceived as the separatist movement of like radicalized Muslims in Xinjiang, if they had done that in Israel, I would still be critical of what Israel is doing, just as I was of what China was doing. But the entire global, the entire Western world would declare Israel to be the most peaceful nation on the planet, and would be falling over themselves to offer Benjamin Netanyahu or whoever implemented that as many Nobel Peace Prizes as they physically possibly can. Why'd you ban that guy who said you're clueless? Do you understand what I mean? I unbanned him. I don't know why you banned him, Anaphase. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, think about it. Think about what Israel's been doing in Gaza right now. Although the surveillance mechanisms that were implemented and the re-education camps and all this stuff was like completely unacceptable in Xinjiang, okay? If Israel operated in the way that the Chinese government operated against like what they called the separatist Uyghurs, okay, that were radicalized or whatever, if Israel operated that way against the Palestinian population in Gaza with the interest of still full-blown integration, everyone in the world would be literally cherishing Israel as the greatest country on the planet. Do you understand? This right here is perhaps one of the best examples of this double standard, this hypocrisy. Hasan, brother, why can't Vietnam make such a great social media app if China can do it? We never talk about how Vietnam is one of the technologically advanced Southeast Asia, bro, right? Yeah, I love Vietnam. Most countries dislike Israel. What are you on? Yeah, we're not talking about the global south, big dog. We're talking about countries in the Western world that still dominate the planet, okay? Whether we like it or not, whether we want to, there is, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, doesn't change that reality that like the Western world still dominates the globe. Okay? Anyway, this guy said you're clueless and then nothing else, which is sad. And then when mods ban these guys, which is understandable because they're derailers, they will turn around and be like, oh, your mods are so censorious. I get it, but how can you be so sure that the Uyghur Muslims are really treated better than the Palestinians? Wait, what? I'm sorry. Have you seen what's going on in Gaza? Is this bait? Like, what are you talking about? What? The connotation is that China is much more secretive? Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like, you think China was doing a bombing campaign in Xinjiang where they dropped multiple nukes worth of munitions into Xinjiang with the express purpose of like destroying every building while they simultaneously trapped the entire captive population of Xinjiang? No, you know what they did? They built high-speed rail into Xinjiang and worked specifically for integration. And to be fair, that process was incredibly brutal, and it still continues to a certain degree. Like the surveillance state was unacceptable, the re-education camps were unacceptable. I don't disagree with that at all, especially because when the Chinese government decides to do something, okay, the Chinese government decides to do something, well, everyone's going to have to follow. That's it. That's just kind of the modus operandi, as best to the best of my ability of like explaining this to people. If they decide to do something, you just got to do it. That's it, right? And a lot of people, I think, in the process, a lot of innocent people in the process also get captured by this dragnet operation, which is like something that I, on principle, take issue with. But it's kind of, I was listening to this Chinese scholar talk about Mao and like what Mao did, right? Oh, I gotta get the door real quick. 1 second. Anyway, we'll talk about this in a. I'll continue talking about Mao in a moment. But in the process of building a dam, Mao was like, "Yeah, this entire city's gonna move," and they did. There's nothing you can do about it. But now that dam is the dam that gives water to Beijing from the north.
Upheld the law that could ban TikTok. The justices ruled the law does not violate the First Amendment. The popular video sharing app now faces a ban in the U.S. unless its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, sells to a U.S.-based company in the next 2 days. Let's bring in senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer and ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer for more. Devin, does TikTok have any legal recourse left, or is this it? Sell or be banned?
Well, this is the final word on this law, Diane, and the Supreme Court just moments ago handed down a unanimous opinion that was not signed, meaning that it was supported by the entire court. We don't know who wrote it, but it does look like Chief Justice John Roberts saying that TikTok's argument that this law passed by large bipartisan majorities of Congress, signed by President Biden, does not violate the First Amendment rights of the company or its 170 million users here in the United States. The justices explain at length how a law like this one meets a significant government interest of protecting the United States national security for a number of concerns over Chinese collection of Americans' data and also their alleged use of the platform to spread propaganda in the United States. And therefore, by this decision, the Supreme Court effectively says that this law can stand and the ban against TikTok can go into effect on Sunday unless the parent company ByteDance, that's the Chinese-owned company, sells its stake to any other buyer that is not a foreign adversary of the United States. And there's, of course, a lot of swirling headlines about the possibilities there, but the Supreme Court definitively saying that this law can stand and a ban can go forward, Diane.
Brian, I know you're still reading through the decision, but what do you make so far of how the justices came to this decision?
So when it comes to First Amendment violations or the allegations of such, what the courts will do is look at what is being banned and how it is being banned. What they're describing is what's called a content-neutral ban, meaning that the government didn't go out and say, you know what, any information that talks about X or Y should be banned. That would have a higher level of scrutiny. What they're saying is this is actually not a direct ban. If anything, it's telling a company that they need to divest in.
Yeah. Cope. I personally think is so ridiculous. I think it's so ridiculous that they have the audacity to claim that this isn't like a ridiculous enforcement with the express purpose of taking TikTok away from its current owners. Like it's just it's not just a ban. Oh, it's not a ban. We just want them to divest and change the product entirely, or at least they can't retain ownership over it. I'm so confused. Is Hasan really saying the Chinese didn't treat the Uyghurs badly? Wait, what? Was there a point where I said that? Where did I say that? What happens to people's ears? There's never been a single moment where I have said that. I just got here. Okay. Where did you hear that? Can you clip any part of my commentary on this where you thought I said that? Where does this come from? I genuinely don't understand. I feel like this is just such a strange phenomena that you have to deal with on a daily freaking basis, dude. I don't get it. What's going on? How does this occur so frequently? I thought the person you were talking to about Palestine was talking about them in comparison. Yes, there is no comparison to be made between an act of genocide. Both are bad, but one is significantly better. And the reason why I gave the example of what Israel-Palestine is because if Israel was doing to the Palestinians what the Chinese government did to the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, the entire Western world would be would be celebrating the humanity of the Israeli government, the morality of the Israeli government. While I consider both to be unacceptable, one is glaringly, obviously, significantly worse than the other. Considering that every single structure is still standing in Xinjiang, including but not limited to the Chinese government's surveillance apparatus exclusively working with dragnet operations that are completely unacceptable, re-education camps, rather than complete death and destruction of all people in the region with the express purpose of ethnic cleansing. It's an insane comparison to make. It's a totally and utterly insane comparison to make. Anyway, it's crazy because it's people will look at Hanifying mosques or whatever and consider it cultural genocide, which I understand. I think there's a decent argument to make that. Okay. Meanwhile, Israel's blowing up the mosque in its entirety. Like, obviously one is simply like, if you have criticism for one and nothing to say about the other, as a matter of fact, you defend the other thing, then you are not like a morally consistent or a serious person at all. You just don't like China and you love Israel. That's it. While I still criticize the Chinese government, okay, it's ridiculous to make this comparison as though like what Israel's doing is somehow better, or even in the same world, even in the same universe.
In order to be able to participate in their company within the United States, or they're completely gone. They're not selecting specific speech. And so when
a dragnet operation is when you go into an area, it's kind of like what the American government does in terms of like their immigrant apprehension programs, where they go into an area and they suspect people of like being political dissidents or being undocumented immigrants in the case of the United States of America, and they cast a wide net and basically drag everyone and prosecute every single person without previously conducting an investigation. It's the reversal of like the normal process, where if someone is supposed to detain you, they're supposed to detain you after they've conducted an investigation, or at least have probable cause to detain you because they suspect you of doing a crime. It is, by my understanding, a violation of international humanitarian law anyway. And yes, the Chinese government absolutely did do that, for the record. I'm not like an Adrian Zen's defender or anything like that, but, let's be real. Now, having said that, it is unimaginably hypocritical for any American to sit around and just be like, that's really messed up. Also, I support Israel. Like, it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Or I give a lot more permission to Israel to do whatever they're doing. But I do think that most of these people are not looking for some integrity or intellectual consistency. They're just simply looking for a way to move your attention away from the wrongdoings of America, because understandably, a lot of people want to think that our government is just like not responsible for a metric ton of evil, but simply they're doing that because, there's just no other option. They really don't want to do that, but they just have to sometimes. When in fact, these past 15 months should have shown every single person that, like, no, we do love the violence. Like, we genuinely, don't mind it. We actually like it.
Doing that, the court is saying, one, this is technology that we're not too familiar with. We're rushing in some sense to get the answer out here. Two, this is content neutral, and it's not about the specific speech that's being made, but the manner in which this data is being collected. And as Devin pointed out, the security risks that are put forward here and that the government is worried about outweighs that of the risk of violating or potentially violating First Amendment rights. So it's well written out. I'm still kind of going through it, but that seems to be the consensus as to why we're here.
So because the ban is aimed more at...
There is nothing funnier about this than it has such a funny Western world flavor to it, where they just have to do this legalese, right, in an effort to make it seem as though there is like a valid reason. And this is not disruptive. And it's not like purely an insane move that the American government is engaging in that's like ultimately censorious, right? Xenophobic and censorious, because that's precisely what it is. It's xenophobic, it's anti-competition, it's censorious. It's all three. It's the triple Monty. It goes against like the principle of American enterprise. It goes against the principle of freedom of speech. That's what it is. But because we have to always behave in a way where like this is done within the confines of a legal structure, it's not pure autocratic control. It's actually done at the best. It's actually done within the legal structure. So it's actually totally permissible. The media and all of these like legal scholars have to play this song and dance of like trying to find some sort of legal reason for it that makes this appropriate. The reality of the matter is there are no backdoors into TikTok because it is, at the end of the day, a Chinese corporation. There are no ways in which the American government can control the flow of information on TikTok. Okay. But also on top of that, TikTok has an incredible algorithm that is better than all of the other algorithms combined. And the American tech CEOs are desperately interested in either undermining said algorithm, destroying it, or purchasing it so it becomes an American competitor. It is in the hands of an American CEO so that they can use this as a weapon to wield down the line. Okay. Does the same go for Tencent? Never heard you talk about Tencent ever? No, I have talked about Tencent quite a bit. I've actually warned that the American government will probably go after Tencent in the same manner. You know, why aren't you upset that China has blocked Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? Because I'm not Chinese. Hello? Because I'm not Chinese. Does it make you, does it strike you as odd? Do I look Chinese to you? I know I pop off with the red sun in the sky when I sing it. So you must have thought I was Chinese. I'm American. This is another thing that I can't describe to people. For some reason, I'm like, dude, I'm an American citizen. I'm a tax-paying American citizen. Okay, I pay my taxes too, and I have a decent amount of motion, right? I have a decent amount of motion in this, in a community with like, you know, tens of thousands of like-minded people, and I can't even get the Democratic Party to do the right thing to win a goddamn election. What makes you think I have any motion in China? I'm trying to fix my backyard. And you're over here being like, but what about the Chinese government not allowing Facebook? Like, I don't know. That's not all right, dude. They should, okay? All right, what can I do about that? What can you do about that? Are you Chinese? It's so weird. Like, it's such a weird thing to just be like, well, it seems like the Chinese government's censors. I know they are. And I disagree with that. Okay. I've openly talked about this many times. I think that China, considering that they are a global hegemonic superpower at this point, do not need to be as censorious. It's understandable if you're like a tiny island nation in the ass cheeks of the most violent superpower on the planet. It's understandable in that situation when that like most violent superpower is constantly waged war upon you, both economic war in the form of a massive embargo since your successful revolution. Okay. But like, yeah, if you're China, you have a lot more bandwidth for free speech. They don't do it. It's not up to me. I can't do anything about it. But ironically enough, I can't even do anything about the American government. And the irony is, you guys think the American government is democratic. You think the American government and our current structure actually cares about the majority opinion. It clearly does not. Because if it did, first of all, the abortion ban would have never taken place. If the American government or the American structures of governance actually cared in any way, shape, or form about the wishes of the majority, TikTok wouldn't be getting banned right now. None of it matters. We wouldn't be funding Israel's genocide. None of that matters. But when I'm, as an American political commentator, when I'm trying to describe this stuff to you, go, but what about China banning Facebook? Yeah, that's wrong. That's bad. That's messed up. They should also have their boomers get their brains warped by AI slop on Facebook. They should do that, okay? I agree with you, but what can I do? Am I Chinese? No, shut the up. There you go. Meanwhile, the Mark Dick Zuckerberg is running around the Joe Rogan Experience to be like, yeah, I hate trans people. I promise. We're not doing any fact checks no more. We hate fact checking. We hate fact checking. And it's like, okay, like, I don't even want my parents to be on Facebook. And you're like, no, the Chinese have to be on Facebook. Like, no one should be on Facebook. I'm over here trying to get you guys to literally implement Chinese Communist Party style restrictions on your parents' internet consumption so that their brains are not so goddamn warped and they don't think that like Korean Jesus is saving dogs from a flood that took place because that's the only thing that shows on your Facebook timeline. Okay. And you're like, no, the Chinese must enjoy the Facebook AI slop. It's crazy. Half of your parents believe in chemtrails. Half of your parents became anti-vaxxers because of the lack of regulation and no regulatory standards whatsoever implemented on these platforms that just feed them full of goddamn slop. And you're over here being like, we need to the Chinese brains in the same way.
Data collection and who owns the app versus what kind of speech is happening on it. It's not a First Amendment violation.
Correct. And when you talk about First Amendment, you often talk about how someone is being limited, what is being limited, and what means it's doing so. And it seems like the law here navigated those rules of First Amendment violations and the law in a way that the Supreme Court said that this is not about First Amendment, this is not a violation, and that there is an interest in which the government does have in protecting.
Yeah, like I said, the funniest aspect of this is that, like, people will be like, well, the Chinese government bans Facebook. Okay, that's wrong. But you understand that that's wrong. So is your argument that it's only wrong if China does it, but it's right when America does it? Like, what is the argument there? Do you think it's wrong or do you think it's right? Do you see what I'm saying? Because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's precisely what it is. It's like they don't want such a successful social media company to be owned by a foreign adversary, a big foreign, scary foreign adversary. That's it, okay? That's it. That's it. They have no backdoors. There's no way for them to control the flow of information. And the straw that broke the camel's back objectively was the ADL doing a final push because they showed how much teens were being radicalized about the Israel stuff, where there's this massive divergence between those who are under the age of 35 and those who are over the age of 35 at this point with respect to how they analyze the genocide of the Palestinians in the hands of Israel with our tax dollars. That was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Donald Trump's administration wanted to ban TikTok. People have been wanting to ban TikTok for quite some time for the reasons that I mentioned. Okay, there are multiple different factors at play here. Other social media tech giants want to own TikTok, understand its algorithm, and want to basically not have that be competition. Okay. That's why YouTube Shorts is popping off. That's why Instagram Reels is popping off. Like, they're trying to actively TikTokify their own social media platforms. But because they can't outcompete TikTok, they want to eliminate it. On the other hand, from the State Department interest, they're worried that, you know, TikTok is not controllable. There is no flow of information that they can control on that platform. So they don't like that kids are getting radicalized. Okay? Then they claim that it's because, like, oh, well, actually, they could just, like, have compromising data on people that inevitably become, like, members of the security apparatus or senators or whatever. But they're actually using, if they're on TikTok, then, like, the Chinese government can blackmail them down the line. And it's like, none of our data is actually private. They could just go to a data broker if they want to do that anyway. It's ridiculous. The irony, of course, is, and this is the reason why I don't think TikTok will be banned inevitably, is because it has too many American institutional investors that make money off of it, okay? That's why I think it's, like, ridiculous that these guys are even having this conversation at all. But yeah, I mean, this is it. I've played this before. We've heard the ADL private conversations before. But the notion that, like, 7 million small business owners have popped off of TikTok, you're just going to cast them all aside. And the billions of dollars in revenue generated off TikTok, you're just going to throw it aside because it's owned by the Chinese. It's owned by a certain percentage of it is owned by the Chinese government or ByteDance, which then still has to go back to the Chinese government and do whatever the Chinese government wants, is ridiculous.
Why has the PR been so awful? I know that's not your area of expertise, but you have to have some thoughts on that, which is, I mean, as you've said, why has Hamas disappeared in terms of public perception? An offer is on the table to have a ceasefire, and yet the world is screaming about Israel. It's like, why aren't they screaming about Hamas? Accept the ceasefire, bring home the hostages. It said it's all the other way around.
Why won't they eat our propaganda as readily any longer? Why won't the kids believe our propaganda any longer? That's the name of the game here. That's what the actual point of contention is here. Okay? You don't get it. You might never will. TikTok sheds light on the horrors of the genocide that Israel is committing, and that is horrible. Facebook empowers genocide like how they did in Myanmar, and that's obviously good. Yeah, I don't get it.
Typically, the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating the realities there? And
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses, inputs every millisecond. And of course, the way this is played out on social media has dominated the narrative. And you have a social media ecosystem environment in which context, history, facts get lost, and the emotion, the impact.
They're not even talking about like context, history, and facts, by the way. They're just straightforwardly talking about like their version of events. That's it. They are only talking about their version of events. That's it. They want to only have one set of facts that are readily available for all. And that's what they want. They want to be able to consistently have a faucet of propaganda. And TikTok has its fair share of this as well, by the way, like right-wing propaganda, reactionary propaganda. The problem is it also has some left-wing propaganda. It is the only platform in the United States of America that has some semblance of parity within the ideological left and right spectrum. That's it. That's what they're afraid of, and that's what they're terrified of. That's what they do not like. The fact that, you know, leftist sentiment goes above 20% on TikTok as opposed to every other platform where it's basically completely dominated by right-wing narratives is what's so scary for a lot of people, because God forbid young people, you know, because of the way that like TikTok operates, because of the way that the TikTok algorithm operates, they don't care. It just doesn't matter what the ideology is. There's no markers on like what kind of ideological predisposition you have. If it's just like something is popular, something is readily consumable, people watch it and people blow it up, and that's it. So that is terrifying.
Impact of images dominates, and we can't discount that. But I think it also,
Reddit is pretty left too, though. Reddit is literally the most specific type of Reddit is the most NatSec liberal website out there. It's worse than many other platforms in that respect. Reddit is not left, it's liberal, okay? It is very liberal. But it's also incredibly national security focused. Like, no matter what you try to do on IG or YouTube, you'll eventually find yourself back in a right-wing algo. Exactly. So much of the American-owned platforms, so much of the Western-owned platforms are just like far-right slanted. Reddit as well, for the record. Not far-right slanted, but Reddit is like basically a think tank in and of itself. And I mean that as a pejorative. Like, when it comes to foreign policy, Reddit is like neocon central. When it comes to social democracy, domestic policy, Reddit's pretty progressive, right? They love Bernie, but they also are like everyone in China. Everyone in China is out to get America. I mean, people talk about Reddit as though it's like a very progressive space. Literally bring up the issue of Israel in 90% of subreddits. See how it goes down for you, okay? Reddit is incredibly pro-NATO, incredibly pro-American empire, incredibly Western chauvinist, incredibly anti-China, incredibly pro-Israel across the board. Part of that is also because Reddit and the way that Reddit operates as a platform lends itself to botting pretty easily, lends itself to brigading pretty easily. So like 100 people that are designated to a task can like truly undermine an entire very popular subreddit. Like they can just change the dynamic in its entirety. It's so simple to do that. It's so simple to bot Reddit. It's so simple to brigade Reddit. It is very, very easy to control. It's very easy to control the narratives on Reddit. And people do it all the time. It happens all the time. What? Why are there 3 million accounts? Wait, what did you say? Are we going to lose our free speech, basically with Trump being the president? I mean, this is happening under the Biden administration. So one might even suspect that we are losing our free speech under the Biden administration as well. And the Trump administration is only going to accelerate it. This is not a partisan thing. I don't even think it has anything to do with parties. Okay? You know what I think? I think it's because America's strength out the global stage is waning. And when the American strength goes away, when America is no longer the dominant hegemonic force, they get scared. And when our leaders get scared, they're going to start behaving in this way. They're going to start tampering with free speech. Free speech is something that you can only have if you are so dominant around the planet that you don't care. Okay? That's what I've tried to always describe to you guys. Like, I get to say the things that I say because I have no motion, because I do not threaten the powers that be. Do you understand? I do not threaten the corporate hierarchy. You can only have free speech, and which is never fully free, by the way. Remember, obviously, Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, and many other examples of America going, okay, too much free speech for you. Okay. There's never been like a full blown free speech. It's just that like free speech in the way that I understand it, free speech in the way that I see it is a permission structure for what is allowed. Okay. If you are too disruptive with your free speech, if you are a whistleblower, a real one that actually identifies some of the horrible things that the American government is doing, for example, that actually harm American interests, then they will imprison you. Then they will punish you. Maybe sometimes you might even get the CIA award for journalism, as people like to say, when you end up, committing Sudoku with 2 bullets in the back of your dome. It's just, free speech existed before the U.S. was hegemonic. Oh, my God. I do love the notion that America had free speech at a time, especially before America was hegemonic. Do you think that we were more open to free demonstration? Are you crazy? Do you know anything about the anti-communist initiatives that this government engaged in? There is a reason why there is no semblance of labor in this country, labor power in this country. Okay, because this is the heart of the Red Scare. This is the heart of empire. This is the heart of the anti-communist sentiment. This is where the Cold War was fought and won. Yeah. That's why it's so funny. Like, the American history is riddled with straightforward assassinations of people that have demanded more. Things that we actually take for granted now. Literally, the weekend. Why do I celebrate the weekend every Friday and say that our forefathers fought long and hard so that we could have a sense of autonomy, a 5-day work week? How do you think that happened? There were demonstrations. People died in the process,
Has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative.
Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
That's the thing I don't understand. Like, in terms of people just defending this like TikTok ban, okay? Defending this TikTok ban while simultaneously operating under this notion that like, well, the Chinese government does it too. Okay, you have an issue with the Chinese government. You're an American, you're not Chinese, and you're advocating for the American government to do so as well. Like, it makes no goddamn sense to me. Here, let's listen to this this private correspondence within Jonathan Greenblatt in the ADL. That's why he's still tweeting about you? Wait, he's still tweeting about me? It is pretty crazy that this man has spent a good deal of time tweeting about me as, one of the leaders of the most significant institutions in the United States of America combating anti-Semitism, supposedly, in air quotes, anti-Semitism. I saw one from like a day ago. Wait, really? It is pretty wild that oh, because Bernie was on my stream? What did he say? Yeah, Bernie was being anti-Semitic, huh? Me and Bernie, just two anti-Semites. a lot of people seem to view you as a dangerous anti-Semite. No, that is what's so disgusting about this, okay? No one, and I mean no one, sincerely believes that I am anti-Semitic, okay? That is so incredibly insane. No one actually believes that I am sincerely anti-Semitic. The amount of time and effort that I have spent actively combating anti-Semitism, the fact that anyone would actually entertain the notion that I am even remotely anti-Semitic is so psychotic. And that's what's so insane about this. Okay? What's so insane about it is that this is a pure fabrication. It is a very cynical weaponization. It's not that I am anti-Semitic. It's that I'm anti-Israel. That is what is terrifying. It's so frustrating, dude. The idea that Bernie Sanders would voluntarily sit for an interview with Hasan Piker, an individual who routinely has used his platform to spread anti-Jewish tropes, amplify propaganda from a designated terrorist group, and promote toxic anti-Zionism, says an awful lot about the senior senator from Vermont and the normalization of anti-Semitism. Like, if my girlfriend saw that tweet, she would just assume it's true. Okay, let me explain this one more time. I'm saying that Jonathan Greenblatt, who is familiar with my game, okay, does not sincerely believe that I am anti-Semitic. Maybe other people who don't know who I am hear Jonathan Greenblatt say this and think that, but the people that make a big fuss about this sort of thing they do not actually think I'm anti-Semitic. I know for a fact that Jonathan Greenblatt does not think I'm anti-Semitic. Okay? He is simply utilizing anti-Semitism allegations in an effort to combat his true fears. Someone who is not anti-Semitic, who is actually saying correct things about Israel. I am, in that respect, a much larger villain for Jonathan Greenblatt than someone who is deeply anti-Semitic but pro-Israel. Okay? Between me and the likes of Ann Coulter, who is deeply and unconditionally pro-Israel, while also simultaneously incredibly anti-Semitic, I am a far greater threat. You want to know why? Because his nieces and nephews tune in and listen to me talk about Israel and go, hey, I know this guy's not anti-Semitic, and I think he's making a lot of good points. That is infinitely more terrifying. Do you understand? That's it. That's the real problem here. As a matter of fact, I'll take it one step further. If I was outwardly anti-Semitic and also anti-Israel, I would not present as big as a threat to someone like Jonathan Greenblatt, because you can immediately point out someone like that for being insane. This is why the likes of Dan Bilzerian and even Candace Owens sometimes get a lot more motion in mainstream institutions and mainstream media, because you can so easily just go, well, look at that guy. They're talking about the importance of the importance of like how this is so directly related to Judaism or whatever, and the cabal and the Jewish cabal and the elite pedophiles or whatever that's it. For someone like Jonathan Greenblatt, especially because they have a very short-term benefit attitude when it comes down to things like this, someone like myself, or God forbid, even scarier, an outspoken anti-Zionist Jew is significantly more terrifying. Okay? That's it. An anti-Zionist Jew or an anti-Zionist who's not Jewish, but certainly goes against anti-Semitism and routinely combats anti-Semitism is absolutely worse than someone who is overtly anti-Semitic and also anti-Israel. Okay? 100%. What? Please stop calling her that. You can acknowledge she's a terrible person without using racially charged nicknames. Candace Owens? You're joking, right? You have to be joking. What is happening right now? Quite literally a white nationalist. She's a black woman who is a white supremacist. What is happening? Okay, you're officially woke of the day. Take a day off. Woke of the day for the chatter. Anyway, let's finish this video.
Again, like we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, and the Hamas and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways that are terrifying. Last thing I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. The language of groups that we've long tracked, who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace.
Like, the funniest aspect of this kind of conversation is that, like, they'll say things like, well, they're saying the same things that Hamas is saying. They're saying the same things that Iran is saying, not recognizing that that actually, for many people, unironically legitimizes the perspective. If your goal is to undermine Hamas, or if your goal is to undermine Iran, you cannot actually present their perspective as the valid one in terms of Israel. But instead of trying to separate, if I was to do propaganda, okay, for Israel, which that's what the Apartheid Defense League is there to do, historically at least, you know, in the 90s, they quite literally got into trouble for spying on Jewish anti-apartheid activists and collaborating with the apartheid South African government. Okay, just, you know, that's what the ADL was doing. Okay, the Apartheid Defense League. But if your goal is to solidify the obviously, you know, anti-Hamas perspective that is broad in the United States of America, or the anti-Iran perspective that is very popular in the United States of America, then you can't hand it to them. You know what I mean? You can't present them as the only people that are saying Israel is doing a genocide to us. Okay? Because the reality of the matter there is, for many people, when they see what's going on, they go, oh my God, this is unlimited bloodshed. This is unlimited brutality happening with our tax dollars. You have to present a reasonable position. This is why I've always maintained the position that, like, liberal Zionism, to a certain respect, is supposed to give Israel much more bandwidth to be cruel and maintain the apartheid. But people supercharge their attitudes, their anti-Palestinian sentiment, their anti-Arab sentiment, their Islamophobic sentiment in the aftermath of October 7, and forgot that, like, that is the way you're supposed to do propaganda to the West. Just completely cast that aside. That's why one of the most dangerous, weapons. That's why one of the most dangerous weapons against pro-Israeli sentiment and Hasbara is the translate from Hebrew button. Okay.
Like this, and went to like Iranian propaganda. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups. We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. Like, the language in their toolkits was all about the...
Like, this person has no way of comprehending that for many people, like myself, okay, they had at least some understanding. Well, not myself, but like many others, had at least some crumb of understanding of the dynamic there with the apartheid. And of course, immediately we're like, this is only happening because of 75 years of occupation, brutal occupation. What do you think is more likely? That people have an accurate assessment of Israeli history and settler colonial violence, or that Hamas and Iran deployed a multi-million-dollar propaganda operation completely without, like, the American State Department ever figuring it out? This complex multi-million-dollar propaganda operation to brainwash the American public. What do you think is what happened? And also, if that's the case, are Israeli historians like Ilan Pappé or Avi Shalom, are they also operating with Hamas propaganda in mind? People like Norm Finkelstein, they're all doing Hamas and Iranian propaganda. They're getting paid by Iran and Hamas. It's even funnier to say that they're being paid by Hamas. Like, Iran at least is a nation state in and of itself, but Hamas is a resistance group that was born out of endless occupation and works within the confines of a concentration camp. They have very limited motion outside. Yeah, Noam Chomsky being paid by the Iranian state and Hamas. Gabor Mate, Holocaust survivor, being paid by the Iranian state and Hamas. Or maybe plenty of these scholars, okay, plenty of these academics that have spent their entire lives documenting the atrocities have come to this conclusion because they have a moral compass that allows them to see right from wrong and aren't simply invested in the maintenance of an apartheid, settler colonial apartheid state.
Entity and lots of other language that we recognized from Iranian propaganda.
I'm confused by this. Why are they shadowboxing? Ignoring reality won't help them achieve their goals. No, ignoring reality and suppressing any kind of like information that counters the Hasbara narratives has been incredibly effective for 76 years. Or, well, at least for like 74, 75 years. It's this last year, since 2021, I would say, where things have started changing. Major U.S. Jewish groups backed bipartisan bill like a see TikTok ban. Jewish federations in North America says it supports the proposed law due to concerns of anti-Semitism proliferating on the platform. Not on Twitter, by the way. Anti-Semitism proliferating on TikTok. Now, I'm not going to tell you that anti-Semitism hasn't been proliferating on TikTok. It certainly has. Sometimes I'll see like a new dog whistle that I didn't even know existed was 127. And I had to dive a little bit deeper into figuring out what this meant. But I saw this like dude doing like, not 127, my number, my autism score, 127,000. Okay, not my autism score, dummies. I think it's 127,000 or something like that. That's a new dog whistle. I don't even know if the ADL database has it. But I didn't know what it was at first. I was like, why are people saying 127,000? Or maybe it's a different number, something along those lines. But it turns out they're saying that, or 217, is it 217 or 271? It's not 127, it's 271. Okay? Yeah, it's 271. It's 271. Sorry. That dog whistle is the Holocaust revisionist, Holocaust denial dog whistle that claims that only 271,000 Jews were killed. It's a dog whistle to deny the 6 million number. Yeah, that's the new dog whistle. And I found out about this dog whistle from TikTok, as a matter of fact. I saw the dog whistle on TikTok and I was like, what the hell is this number? So, don't act like you don't know. No, what? I have no idea what you're saying. Yeah, it's also kind of it's still insane that they're just saying like only 270,000 Jews were killed, not 6 million. Oh, okay. Like, I mean, it's already incorrect, but even then, it's like a psychotic thing to say that is like supposedly acceptable. Like, what is the argument here? But anyway, listen. The point is, TikTok, of course, also has anti-Semitic sentiment. But which platform do you think has more open, overt anti-Semitic sentiment than TikTok? It's Twitter. And I've never heard Jonathan, I've never heard the Apartheid Defense League go after Twitter, okay? As a matter of fact, after Elon Musk openly seconded one of the most common Nazi ideals, the notion that Jews are doing unlimited third world immigration into the Western world to destroy Western superiority, okay? When he said, you have said the truth to that argument on his own platform that he owns, on his own platform that he's unbanned every single Nazi on, Jonathan went up to him and was like, yo, you got to be pro-Israel, dog. What's this about? And Elon Musk was like, no, I love Israel. And Jonathan Greenblatt was like, yeah, Elon is he's a good guy, and defended him. It was so ridiculous. This moment and this argument, this glaringly obvious instance of the Apartheid Defense League refusing to actually combat anti-Semitism, but instead working to, defend the apartheid, okay, was so frustrating that the previous president of the ADL was like, what the are you doing to Jonathan Greenblatt? The previous president of ADL, who's also not exactly a good guy either, Even he was like, dog, what are you doing? When Donald Trump was like, if I lose, it's because of the Jews. I've given everything to you, Jews. Why won't you actually give back to me for once? I've given you Israel. I've given you everything. Jonathan, remember that? Nothing. Just like a subtle nod being like, Mr. President, Mr. Trump, sir, you have said something that maybe is being misunderstood. I apologize for even criticizing you, but dude, TikTok is not anti-Semitic. All the Gaza stuff just got shared a lot. No. I'm not saying TikTok is like overwhelmingly anti-Semitic. I'm saying that every platform has a decent amount of anti-Semitism in it, TikTok included, of course. But if there's one platform that you could designate as the most anti-Semitic platform, it's Twitter. Like open neo-Nazi goes viral on this platform virtually every single day, where there's another gif of like Adolf Hitler and people are like, we have to apologize to him. Anyway,